Another opportunity in home education for fun or disappointment is creative writing. Creative writing is about getting your ideas down and expressing yourself in symbols on a page of paper. But all too often it's made into something else. Concerns about spelling, the neatnesses of writing, syntax, the parts of speech, grammar. It's amazing that any of us really can learn to write with all the emphasis on all the syntax and grammar. If it was only simply about expressing yourself, then more people would be keen to have a go. It's not about that message and then being an author, a created being with a story to tell, a way of looking at something that no one else has. In other words, something that people want to participate in. Imagine you're going for your driver's lesson and you've got the instructor there and you go to touch the car keys and he goes, "Wait, what are you doing? You can't start the car." You've got to learn all the correct names for the parts in the engine of the car and the correct order in which they come. And then we will let you drive the car. In fact, you don't even need to drive the car, we'll just give you your driver's license. Well, roads would be a dangerous place everywhere, wouldn't they? Written communication, like reading, is about sending and receiving a message. It's not about the syntax. I tell you that story today because I know for many of us as parents in an adult world where things being spelt correctly and grammar being a certain way, these are the things that we'll tend to look at when we look at our students writing in the home. The program you've given from school may ask them to write certain things in different genres, and you need to take a step back and support your child in that journey of putting their ideas down on the page. But if you come in straight away and say to your child, "Oh, that's not spelt right," or "Oh, that's not very tidy," for a lot of boys they'll say, "Oh, I can't win, I won't play." That's it, you'll lose them. Or they'll lose heart, or they'll get discouraged inside and be so worried about writing an idea down to get the spelling right that they'll forget what their meaning was, what their message was. I often sit with students in the home and the parent and the child will tell me how in the past they just can't get their ideas down. And I'll say to the child, "Do you ever sit there and you're trying to write that sentence down that you've got in your head, but you're stuck on a word and you're trying to remember how to spell that word, and then you start trying to think, I wonder what word might make sense in the place of that word that I can spell," and you'll be playing these complicated games. And then by the time you think of a word and you write it down, then you go to complete your sentence, but you forgot what you were going to say. You would not believe the number of times I've said that to students who find writing difficult. And they've gone, "How did you know? How did you know I do that?" And I had one girl saying, "Mum, he can read my mind." Well, how I know is because I left school without those academic skills. Students need help to focus on getting their ideas down, not worry about the syntax. After you've done your draft or your piece of writing, you've got your ideas down, that's when you can go back and work back into them and improve all those syntax issues and things. I often remind parents that even a journalist will be writing or scribbling in shorthand or taking notes in a very scribbly form at best, and then go home and rewrite it out. And then it will go to an editor and then a proofer. In other words, there's 3 or 4 steps in the process of getting that finished piece of writing, and that's for a professional writer. And yet we expect children to write perfectly the first time. Does that even seem morally right to you? If you do find your child really doesn't have a clue how to get their ideas down on paper, then you need to help them. The school obviously hasn't been able to help them, probably due to a busy classroom or the child themselves finding loopholes, places to hide, as we said before. But with you at home, suddenly they can't get away with that. It's just you and them, or you and 2 or 3 other students. So you're going to see that they're not really getting a lot written down, or you're going to see that they're stuck mid-sentence and can't seem to move on. Now, in the writing notes that I'll make available to you at the bottom of this video and the links, there is a full comprehensive list of steps and strategies on how to get children passionate about writing, how to help them get their ideas down on the page, how to use a mind map, for example, how to use the pluses, minuses, an interesting chart, a PMI chart, how to simply Do a writing blast, which is where you write down as quickly as you can your ideas, not worrying at all about grammar, not worrying at all about spelling. A lot of children simply practicing that writing blast activity take off in creative writing because that vetoes all those silly games that kids get caught up playing where they can't get their ideas down because they're so worried about spelling it correctly. So in the writing notes, you'll see a section called Getting Your Ideas Down, and this is where we go through those strategies. A mind map is just simply a star diagram, as some call it, where you have in the middle, if you're writing about going to the beach, then what were the events that happened, who was there, what were the sights, what were the feelings, taste, touch, smells, what things do you particularly remember that stand out to you? And then as they've written these things around that mind map, with your support helping them, then you can say, okay, I want you to say, you say it was blue like what? And so you go like, and then they write like the sky or the ocean or whatever. Or it smelt like grandma's chocolate chippy biscuits cooking, or something like that to describe a flower. I don't know. Kids come up with the most beautiful similes and metaphors if we just take the time to encourage them to fit them in around that planning diagram called a mind map. So remember, when doing a mind map, you're not in a classroom where there's lots of ideas coming from lots of people, lots of students. So in other words, you need to take the place of the rest of that class and the teacher and help them get their ideas down on a mind map. Students are probably meant to know how to do their own mind maps by year 3, simple versions, and year 4 definitely. However, they don't. So often it's done collectively and they'll hang back and there'll be others contributing the ideas. Another ingredient in modern education that has taken away children's opportunity to be successful in creative writing is called the computer. Suddenly children now are working on tablets and computers where they're meant to write and respond to something, and of course it's very hard to do a mind map on a computer. Instead, they're just meant to write their ideas down. If you're trying to do that on the computer, it will always come out disjointed or convoluted. With older students especially, you'll have them writing out their paragraph and then reworking into specific sentences, and they'll work so much on one sentence that it will no longer tie in with what their thesis statement was in their introduction or even the opening topic sentence of that paragraph. So it's very important to plan it well, write it out on paper first and then work into it, and then I'd suggest typing it out on the computer. I know this is contrary to what many schools are doing now, me telling you to switch off the computer, work on paper with a mind map or a pluses, minuses, an interesting chart to organise our ideas, whatever tool you use. But if the children don't do that, they won't get a quality result. In the writing notes, you'll see I also talk about the tools of poetry. That's just simple language for talking about similes, metaphor, personification, onomatopoeia, alliteration. And these are tools that you can learn about just within one page of reading, and encourage the students to add these things into their stories, use them to increase the quality of the description. I always say to students when they are writing that they should make the reader feel like they are there, and only they can do that. I also tell them that only you can see through your eyes. And when someone's reading your writing, they want to hear your story. They don't want to hear mine. So it's okay for you to come up with your own unique ways of describing and seeing, telling about things you saw. Another common issue with home education, as well as in the classroom, is students saying, have I written enough? Have I done enough? And I usually say to students, if they ask me that, the mere fact that you're asking me that tells me that you haven't. And they say, well, how do we know when we've written enough? I say you write as much to tell exactly what you need to tell with as much detail so the reader is engaged and understands your message, can see the pictures. If a student's been asked a question in their program, whether it's computerized or on paper, then taking 5 minutes to answer who, what, when, where, how and why around that paragraph that they're expected to write will give them a much better quality piece of writing than if they just launch into it, write something or type something. So if your student is struggling with creative writing and you have the program from the school and it's asking them to write about something they're unfamiliar with, they don't have any personal experience with, then they don't really have a chance at practicing the basics of creative writing. In this situation, I would suggest that you allow them to write about something they're passionate about. Doing that mind map first, drafting it out quickly, not worrying about spelling and those things, increasing the quality of their message, working back through it, conferencing with you. And when you're conferencing, you're not picking them up on spelling and the grammar. You're picking them up on, oh, so you say the bird was beautiful. What was beautiful about the bird? Star 1, down the bottom of the page, star 1, and they go away and write what was beautiful about the bird. So, and then they come back and you do star 2, star 3, star 4, star 5, and that helps them build the quality of that piece of writing. In other words, your conferencing with them is putting the emphasis on the message of the story or the piece of writing, not on the syntax and the grammar. That, just like for a journalist, will be done in subsequent processes. I'll also make available the early writing activities and notes, which should give parents an understanding of the developmental steps that allow us to come to a place where we can write a message with correct syntax, grammar and spelling. There's lots of steps in this process that even begin with children drawing their little picture, which is a form of on-paper story, asking them about their story, and then saying, would you like to have a go at writing out your story? So I'm asking you to take a step back, be patient with your children, and remember those developmental steps. Help them scaffold their ideas to turn them into pieces of writing, and support them in that process with positive conferencing, where you look at the piece of writing together and you help them line by line, work into it and develop it. Thanks for listening. All the best.